Hello, welcome to Jason Hill Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And I'm doing an impromptu live stream today, something I kind of came up with at the last second. Want to do a video today, and I thought, what better subject to talk about than the U.S. presidents, since today is President's Day that we celebrate here in America. Um, I think originally it's supposed to be like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln's birthday or something like that celebrated, but we just call it President's Day in total. And if something you might not know about me is I'm a huge fan of studying on the U.S. presidents. Um, it's one of my favorite subjects to read about, to watch documentaries, hear lectures on. Yeah, I'm a big fan of. I'm a big history guy in total. I love studying history. In fact, I went to college and got a degree in history education. So it's always been a favorite subject of mine. And the subject I study the most is U.S. presidents. I always am fascinated by uh, the men, as it is, that are able to reach the highest office in the country and in the most powerful country in the world, the United States, of course, the country I'm from. So I love reading about. In fact, you get a lot of U.S. history through reading the presidents as well. So it's a fun subject matter to, I think, study. As we have 46 presidents in total, though actually only 45 men, as Grover Cleveland was president on two different times. He won the presidency, lost it, and then won it again. So he's counted twice in the 46 presidents. But so there's really only been 45 individuals that have been president of the United States, all men, of course. Hey, Norton, how you doing? Just saw your Tammy and the T-Rex video. Pretty interesting video there. Um, but yeah, so I thought, and also this is my 300th video I've made on the channel. So I want to do something kind of special for my 300th. I don't know, 300th is somewhat of a milestone, I guess. I don't know how big of a milestone that is, but that's kind of cool every time you get to the next 100 videos on the channel, anyways. And so, and very happy that I've got to 300 and very grateful to everybody that's watched any of my videos of the 300. Honestly, I look back at the videos I started out weren't very good. I didn't have a ring light. I didn't have a very good phone, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know how to edit or do anything. So hopefully they're getting much better here in the 300th video. Thanks, Norn. Anyway, so yeah, so I just wanted to, I have some books I wanted to kind of go through, some books I own that talks about the U.S. presidents that I've enjoyed reading, and just kind of recommend them as I talk about some of my favorite presidents that I like to study about. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, I love reading about the presidents, and I love visiting the homes and the presidential museums is a favorite thing of mine to do when I can. Of course, here in the state of Kansas, we have one president that is Ike Eisenhower. Of course, the World War II general who then became president of the United States back in the 50s. He was a two-term president, very popular at the time. So, of course, we're very proud to have Eisenhower as our president because we feel pretty cool. Like man, he's like the hero of World War II, and he was very popular and all that. So I've been to his presidential museum in Abilene, Kansas. Really cool museum, of course, because lots of World War II history there. Also visit his house there. Really cool one. Also, Harry Truman has a presidential museum in Independence, Missouri, which is only about 30 miles from, or 30 minutes from my house. So I've been there, and he has a really cool presidential museum as well. Of course, one of the most interesting subject matters is he had to make the decision to drop the atom bomb during World War II when he went from vice president to presidency when Roosevelt died. Hey, AJ, how's it going? Yeah, evening for you. Yeah, late after, or yeah, afternoon for me. Um, but yeah, really cool museum, and his house is also, he has a house also there in Missouri. So I got two presidents that are kind of close to where I live. Um, so that's kind of cool. Also, I've been to Herbert Hoover's Presidential Museum in West Branch, Iowa, which is 5 or 6 hours from me, maybe. Hey Andy, how's it going? Good, AJ. Got some Brits in here talking about the United States president, so I hope you're anyway can hopefully learn a little bit of history from this channel maybe and enjoy it. Um, but yeah, I've been to that. That's a real cool museum as well because I didn't know much about Herbert Hoover, and of course he was president right before um, the Great Depression and all that. So actually a lot of interesting stuff there. I've been to Virginia because I have an uncle that lives in Virginia, and I visited there some 4 or 5 years ago, and I got to see Monticello, where Thomas Jefferson's house, and he has a really cool, plantation area that you can tour, and also Mount Vernon, which is George Washington's home that he lived in, and it's a really cool tour there of his house in his area, his plantation, whatever that he lived in. So those are definitely the two highlights, I would say, of everything. I definitely recommend those two houses, Mount Vernon and Monticello. Is really cool places. I loved visiting those two. So I've been to Ronald Reagan's boyhood home in Galena, Illinois. I got to visit there as well. And USS Grant also has a home there, but it was closed. It was closed that day, so I didn't get to actually get a tour of that one. But anyway, so those are some of the presidential museums and houses I've been to. I always love going to them when I can. Of course, I have to do a little bit of travel, so um, some I would like to go to. The big bucket list for me is I would love to go see Abraham Lincoln's Presidential Museum, which is in Springfield, Illinois, which isn't too terribly far. I could do that. Take like a day to get there, probably see it, and take a day to get back, or half a day at least. And so at some point, I definitely will go see that because I love to see Abraham Lincoln stuff. And also, I'd love to go down to Texas, see George Bush and George W. Bush's museums, presidential museums. Definitely on my bucket list of stuff I'd love to go see. Of course, Bill Clinton has one in Arkansas, and then if you go up, Indiana, I think has a presidential museum for not forgetting his name, but if you go up to Michigan, I know there's Gerald Ford's Presidential Museum in Grand Rapids, Michigan. In Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, I believe has, or somewhere around there, has Andrew Jackson's. And then, of course, if you go up to Ohio, it has tons of presidents there. So those are some of the closer areas for me. At some point, I'd love to go visit more of those areas and see more presidential museums and houses. Obviously, you got Massachusetts. You got John Quincy Adams, and John F. Kennedy. That would be cool, but that's pretty far for me to get to. I don't know if I'll get to that. That'd be awesome, though. All right, my sister on the way to Ant-Man. Okay. Yeah, let me know. It hasn't been getting good reviews for the most part, unfortunately. Let's see, Rad. Let's see, John F. Kennedy was a monumental president. My mom talks very highly of. Yeah, that was definitely before our time, Norn. Yeah, John F. Kennedy. Yeah, I'd love to see his in Massachusetts. Of course, New York has the Roosevelts, the two Roosevelts, I believe, are up there, and there's some other ones. Again, that'd be kind of a far drive for me, or I don't know, to get to. It'd be hard to get to those. Obviously, it'd be awesome to get there and get some of those museums. Also, be fun to go to California and see Ronald Reagan, Nixon's museums, but again, it's a little far away. So we'll see. I still love to see some more, anyway, museums and presidential houses and all that. So yeah, it's definitely kind of I don't know if it's called a hobby of mine. I'd love to travel more and see more. I wish I could see more, but of course it costs a lot of money. But anyway, so that's where I'm at. First, I was going to talk about the current book that I'm reading right now is Thomas Jefferson, The Art of Power by John Mitchum. Definitely is like the go-to book to read about Thomas Jefferson. It's roughly a little over 500 pages. I think I'm about halfway over through that one. Like I said, I've been to Monticello, really cool area to visit. And obviously, Thomas Jefferson, one of the big names in early presidents and one of our founding fathers, and one of the most interesting presidents to read about and to study, I think. Especially when I went and saw Monticello, I was really fascinated by it. Obviously, he's a very controversial president, as well as a lot of the early presidents were. But man, this guy was a genius. I mean, I think maybe the smartest president we ever had, it feels like. Obviously, a great political writer, a great statesman, um, and also he was an inventor. He invented the swivel chair, I know. And if you go to his home in Monticello, he invented like a thing where you can write three letters at the same time. Like these three different pins are connected, and you write one letter and it copies them on other. Really cool. And he also like invented a speedometer for the horse carriage, so you can see how many miles he goes. I don't know. So I mean, it's crazy. He can invent. He designed Monticello, and overlooked its building. So he basically, yeah, designed his own house based on French architecture because he was big on France because he was an ambassador to France during the American Revolution War. Anyway, so it's just a fascinating president to read about and kind of all the stuff he did, and it's in his personal life as well. It's very interesting. But yeah, this is a really good book that I'm getting through on him. Uh, Definitely recommend. And since I was on the subject matter, this is the book I got when I was in Monticello. This is the official guide to John Thomas Jefferson, and kind of has pictures of the house and different stuff in there. Definitely one of the coolest moments I've had. Go visit that place. Thomas Jefferson, he has an incredible library. He was a huge reader. He read a lot. I want to say he started like the University of Virginia or something like that at one time. And anyway, so he was big on just a lot of interesting stuff about Thomas Jefferson to read about. Anyways, of course, he wrote the Declaration of Independence, which is one of the two most important documents in our history, along with the Constitution. So, I mean, he definitely, of course, the Louisiana Purchase is probably the biggest thing he did, where we doubled the size of the United States at that point. It was maybe his biggest accomplishment as president. So yeah, so lots of great stuff there to talk about. Next, I want to talk about probably one of my favorite, most recent president when I was born, in fact, is Reagan. And this is a biography of Reagan, the life. H.W. Brands. H.W. Brands is a pretty popular historic writer, writes a lot of different presidential stuff, books and all that. Very well reviewed and writer. Anyway, so I like to get more of his stuff as well. But yeah, Reagan, this is a pretty good book I read a couple years ago. Pretty big one. It looks like close to 600-700 pages. But Reagan, he was president when I was born. My parents are huge fans, and so I kind of grew up just hearing a lot of great stuff about Reagan, of course, and looking back at what he did. He's very interesting, of course, because he was an actor in Hollywood. He started off as a Hollywood actor who then switched to being governor of California, was very successful, and then was president for 2 terms. One of the most popular presidents we've had, in fact, in recent times. I said in my lifetime, I'd say maybe the most popular president we've had. As I think it's second election, I want to say he won every state except for Minnesota. So I mean, he almost won every single state, which has never happened before. And that's the last time we've had that, I think, dominant of a presidential election where one president just dominated. Because in today's last 4 or 5 presidents elections, whatever I've seen, they've been neck and neck. I mean, there isn't a dominant presence as much anymore. The country's pretty much divided in between for the most part. So, but yeah, so very interesting. Of course, some most notable things. And like I said, he's probably the most popular president if you're a conservative Republican. He's kind of the face of conservatism that people kind of go back to, because he really was a champion of lessening the government power and getting the government out of the people's business and letting the people strive on their own and all that. So that was a very popular opinion that we still believe today if you're a conservative Republican. He also, of course, maybe his biggest tribute is standing up against Gorbachev and the Russians during the Cold War era, and telling Gorbachev, tear down that wall. Which soon after his presidency, Russia eventually they let the Berlin Wall get torn down. So that was a huge accomplishment, getting rid of that and kind of basically stopping the Cold War in a sense. So that's probably his biggest accomplishment he had in his presidency. But yeah, really good president, I think, to study. Of course, when you talk about presidents, how can you not talk about this one, George Washington? This is a really great book by Ron Chernow, Washington Our Life. Maybe the best book on George Washington, at least in recent times. Ron Chernow, another really great writer. Love to get more of his stuff when it comes to presidential history. Anyways, but yeah, really pretty solid book there. It's a good, let's see, it's a good 800-page book. But yeah, really fascinating. I mean, obviously, probably the most popular president we've ever had in history. He's the first president of the United States. He's the only president to be to have two unanimous elections. Never will happen again. First times ever, or only times ever happened in our history. Obviously, very popular because he was the head general during the American Revolution, which we won, or British backed off, of course, and we basically won the war and became a country. So we owe so much to George Washington for being the United States anyway. So obviously, because of that, he's one of the most popular presidents, and he's always first or second. Anytime you ask a historian, I think he's number one or number two best president of all time because of that. And he's, of course, being the first president, he had to set so many precedents because no one's ever been president. So he had to really kind of start it all and really set the bar of what a president does and how they act and their powers and all that. So very, very important stuff anyways. And like I said, I visited his house in Mount Vernon in Virginia. I got that book that I got when I visited Mount Vernon there, and there's his house. Really cool because he has a Potomac River. He purposely built his house here, or no, actually, I think it was his wife's house or something like that. But he loved this house because he got to swim in the Potomac River when need be. Anyway, so it's a really cool site, anyways, and a really cool house to visit. And of course, like I said, you got all these cool pictures in here of what the house looks like and the different rooms in there. And it's a really cool tour that you get to have there. Yeah, definitely a must, I think. Of course, depends on where you are from the country. I have two friends from Virginia, Sam St. John and Jacob Martin. So I don't know if they've been there. They probably have. They can talk about that as well. So, you know, I need to brush up my presidential knowledge in terms of historical knowledge. It's mainly wars and cinema. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And also Garrett. Hi, Garrett. Nice to see you. Yeah, definitely. I study a lot, of different wars. That's always an interesting subject matter to study about because definitely are big monumental moments in history are when you have a big war of some kind. Like I said, studying presidents is so fun for me because you learn so much about history through the presidents and through the biggest, office in the land. And I think it's so interesting to see what does it take to get to that? How do these people get to that point where they can become president? It's very fascinating to me. Because it's not easy to do and it takes a special person kind of sometimes to get there. See, Washington is the Sean Connery of the presidents, and that's standard like Connery. Yeah, good analogy there. Good, always good to get a good James Bond analogy there. Yeah, he's the Sean Connery of presidents for sure. Also, probably my favorite president to study about, obviously, and one of the big ones is Abraham Lincoln. This is one I got. There's a bunch of books on Abraham Lincoln, so it's always hard to say what's the best one. I got this one, pretty good one called A. Lincoln, a biography by Ronald C. White Jr. Pretty good biography on him. Like I said, I think there's many on him, as he's one of the most popular presidents to write about, I would say. And this is another one that's almost 700 pages, a little under 700-page book. But yeah, really good book to learn about Abraham Lincoln. Like I said, I would say my favorite president of all time. Obviously, again, he's usually number one, number two on anybody's list. So he's a must, I think, to study and to learn a lot about. He's the first Republican president that we ever had. He started out as a Whig, and then the Republican Party kind of was just starting while he was in Congress. And then he ran for president under the Republican Party and was the first one to win it. Anyway, so really started the Republican Party, which Republican Party is still one of the two major parties today in politics. and he again really kind of set the standard of the Republican idea of less government power, more power to the states kind of ideas. And of course, obviously a very fascinating individual, one of the best speakers we've ever had. I mean, he was kind of the great orator, I believe. Um, and he was, yeah, obviously the Gettysburg Address is his most famous speech, but very famous speaker. Did a really good job there. Really great debater as well, as he got the Lincoln Douglas debates, are considered like the great debate of all time. They did, and yeah, of course he was a lawyer, a congressman, all this. Of course, being president, he was president during the most tumultuous, what's the word? During the hardest time in the United States, of course, with the Civil War breaking out right when he became president. Of course, there's a big divide between the South and the North with slavery, and the South wanted their rights, and were afraid that the North was going to take them away. And when Abraham Lincoln became president, they were really thought, they're going to try to stop slavery, so they broke away from the country, started their own country, the Confederate States of America. And yeah, so it was a really terrible time to become president, but Abraham Lincoln was the right president for that time, and really fought hard to keep the country together, and who thought that the country is stronger if we're together. And so we had to go through a horrible civil war in order to stop the South from succeeding, and also to stop slavery, which is one of the most monumental moments in U.S. history, of course. Stopping, really terrible practice that we started out with in the beginning. And obviously, yeah, just there's nothing bigger, more monumental than that. The Emancipation Proclamation, which he signed, which ended slavery, and also passed some amendments at that time to help, free slaves. And yeah, nothing bigger than that. So that's why he's probably considered, in my opinion, the best president we've ever had. And we won the war, and we were able to unite the country back together. And unfortunately, was assassinated. He got reelected, of course, right towards the end of the war, I believe, or during the war. Then soon after the war was over, he was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, unfortunately, which is real unfortunate because Abraham Lincoln really wanted to mend the fences and bring the country together, and not punish the South necessarily, but try to bring them back in to the country and have a peaceful transition and all that. So it would have been great, I think, if he was still president. He could have managed all that really well. But unfortunately, when you stop something like slavery, people are going to go after you that are for it. So yeah, but yeah, great book, great president to read about, in my opinion. So anyway, so those are the actually 4 big books I have. I want to get more, of course. They just take a long time for me to get through because they're usually pretty big books, and it's not such a easy read because it's just a lot of facts and information to process. So it takes a little bit longer to get through. I'm also reading this through this presidential series called The American Presidents, which I'm enjoying. I got 7 books so far in that series, starting with George Washington here. And yeah, it's called The American Presidents. And these books are only about 150 pages, but I really enjoy them because you can get through them a lot quicker and being 150 pages compared to reading like a 600 to 800 page biography on a president. You can get a lot of good information in just 150 pages on each president. Anyway, so it's a really good series. I recommend that. I'm still got a lot to go through. I got George Washington there. I got John Adams, our second president of the United States, first vice president of the United States, only one-term president, but also a very smart, genius guy, one of the great founding fathers from Massachusetts. Of course, got Thomas Jefferson. Also, of course, Thomas Jefferson was the first Secretary of State, second Vice President of the United States, and third President as well. And then you got the fourth President, James Madison. Of course, considered the father of the Constitution, as he was in the Constitutional Convention. He was writing down a lot of the notes and information that we get, and also kind of was the one that I want to say came up with or was responsible for the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, which is considered the 10 most important, you can say 10 most important amendments to our Constitution, starting with, freedom of speech and freedom of religion as the First Amendment. It makes, in my opinion, the United States the greatest country in the world. But yeah, it's James Madison, very important, of course, president during the War of 1812. So also really well known, famous for that. Then we got fifth president of the United States, James Monroe, another Virginian president. Friends of James Madison was Secretary of State. James Madison was Secretary of State during Thomas Jefferson's presidency, and James Monroe was Secretary of State during James Madison's presidency. James Monroe also won 2 elections almost unanimously. I think only one person didn't vote for him. So he was like 1 vote away from being unanimous voted, which is just to say at the time, the Federalists were like really, really popular at that time. Starting with Thomas Jefferson, started like that party, and that party won like 4 or 5 presidential elections in a row. So it was just, nobody could beat the Federalists at that time. You got the 6th president of the United States, John Quincy Adams, of course, son of John Adams. The first time we had a son be president from a former president, which we've only had twice, of course, with George Bush and George W. Bush. We also had a grandfather and grandson as well, William Henry Harrison, and I believe he had Benjamin Harrison, I believe, was his grandson, who also became president at one time. So a couple times that's happened in our lifetime. But John Quincy Adams, another really fascinating president to read about. I mean, of course, grew up the son of a president, and went to school in like France and all these places that his dad was being ambassador to. So he traveled the world as a kid. He was fluent in 5 or 6 different languages. He's considered one of the smartest guys we ever had. I mean, he's up there, I think, with Thomas Jefferson and John Adams is some of the smartest guys we ever had in the presidency. Of course, he was Secretary of State during James Monroe's presidency during those 8 years, and came up with the Monroe Doctrine. Yeah, the Monroe Doctrine is kind of the big thing he came up with. I've heard many historians consider him probably the greatest Secretary of State we've ever had. I mean, just a genius guy. Became president for 1 term, of course, then lost to Andrew Jackson. Of course, the presidency that he won was very controversial, as he barely won, and Andrew Jackson was really the most popular president, or Andrew Jackson probably should have won, but John Quincy Adams won, and it seemed like he might have done something nefarious to win, but nobody really knows. Can't really prove it, but anyways. And the most interesting about Quincy Adams is after he was done with presidency, he went back and became a congressman, which is like the only time that's ever happened. Usually after you're president, you retire and, you write books and give speeches or whatever. But John Quincy Adams is one of those few that, like, I'm not done serving the country. After losing the presidency, I'm going to be a congressman. And he died on the Congress floor. He was in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol building, and he died of a heart attack on the floor of Congress. I mean, really interesting stuff there. Adam, hey Adam, happy President's Day and happy 300th anniversary. Thank you. Yeah, 300 videos. I want to do something a little special today. So, and then I got my last book I got in the series is Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States. First Democrat president, by the way. Democrat Party just started at that time, and Andrew Jackson was the first one. Andrew Jackson first was part of the Federalist Party, and then that broke up, and Democrat Party was then formed, and he was the first Democrat president. That's obviously still a major party to today. Came from Tennessee. Another pretty interesting president, pretty rough guy. Was, of course, like a general during War of 1812, and was the hero of the Battle of New Orleans. Kind of got his popularity there, and was a 2-term president. A lot of controversy, though. One of the most controversial presidents we ever had, of course, with the Trail of Tears of the driving Native Americans off their lands. A lot of them died because of that, and also was a slave owner as well. But yeah, Adams asked me about Red Dead Redemption 2 video game I'm playing right now. Yeah, I'm obsessed with that game. Like, you can spend hours and hours on that game and get nowhere, and it's a blast. But yeah, definitely enjoying that. Anyway, so those are some individual president stuff. Some other stuff I have just to recommend. In my opinion, this is the Smithsonian, the President's Visual Encyclopedia. It goes all the way to Donald Trump. The hard part about books about the presidents is that we always get new ones, so it has to be updated constantly. So you just buy one, and I usually don't want to, keep updating it. So I just have to just go, okay, it's up to this point, and then I have to whatever. But really cool book. It's not very long. Covers every president, some of the basic facts of the president there. Pictures of different stuff that they did and they were part of. I was gonna say, it looks like sometimes they talk about the first lady as well, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, but yeah, lots of good visuals, lots of good basic facts. It's a pretty easy book to get through. I've been to the Smithsonian, of course, in Washington, D.C. I've been to those museums as well. Really cool place to go to. Lots of walking. You have to walk a lot if you go to Washington, D.C. I got this book is a pretty cool book. I really like. It's called Mr. Beat Presents the Ultimate American Presidential Election Book, Every Presidential Election in U.S. History, by Matt Beat. Matt Beat, he's a YouTuber. He has a YouTube channel, Mr. Beat, and he does U.S. history. Is his the subject matter of his YouTube channel. And it's a decent one. It has a lot of interesting information, especially about elections. He's really big on U.S. elections, which is why I got this, because I'm fascinated with U.S. elections. I've been following U.S. elections since probably since 96 or so, maybe when I was like 13 or 14 years old, when I first kind of started watching, the presidential debates and the, what do you call them? The conventions, and then sitting on sitting on election night and watching who's winning. So I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to politics and stuff like that. So I love politics and reading about it and keeping the board. Election season is always really fun for me. I don't know if that's just me. It's very frustrating too, of course, because the last elections have been didn't really go very well, I should say, or they take too long. Elections you should know who president is on the day of the election, not weeks and months afterwards. I think that's terrible, but hopefully we can fix that. But anyway, but yeah, Mr. Beat, he was a U.S. history teacher in the state of Kansas, which is always cool. So he's a fellow Kansan like me, and he's a teacher, or he was a teacher at one time. Anyways, but yeah, it's a really cool book. It follows all the elections. Show you, like, it shows like who was nominated for what party, kind of says who the major players were. And then I love this. The best thing is this map shows the map of like who won what state and how many electoral votes were in each state, which obviously changed so much as the country expanded. And so really cool to learn about the different elections. It's a really good book, and it's cool to support somebody on YouTube like that. Hey, Briar, how's it going? Just talking about the presidents of the United States. I'm a big fan of the Complete Idiot's Guide. I have a lot of Complete Idiot's Guide books on history. Like, I have a lot of history books that are Complete Idiot's Guides, because this one's on the American presidents. I always like, there's, Complete Idiot's Guide. There was like another one that's similar. But of course, the whole idea is that it's supposed to be somewhat simple to read. It's not supposed to be too difficult. That's why I call it, like, if you're an idiot, you should be able to read this. I guess the idea still has a lot of information, though. I mean, you get a lot of good information from these books, and they make it pretty easy to read. I like, and has some humor as well. in there. But yeah, this is a good one to kind of just brush up on every president of the United States and all the major events and all that stuff. I think this goes up, maybe goes up to Bill Clinton. I don't know. I don't know if it gets up to George W. Bush, the one I have. Again, you have to upgrade these books every election season if there's a new president, which I'm not going to pay money to keep doing that. So, but still, if you don't have one, you get the recent one. You get all the presidents at the time. But yeah, still a pretty cool book. Lots of good information there. The only thing, my criticism of this book is how they categorize it. Instead of going in chronological order, which I would prefer just going from George Washington on, they categorize it as like they start off with the Mount Rushmore presidents, so those four presidents on Mount Rushmore, and then they go through what they call the heavyweights. They use boxing terms for some reason, but they go through the heavyweights, which they consider like the greatest presidents we've had. And then they go to middleweights, which are like middle of the road presidents, and then the lightweights or something like that, which are the bad presidents. And then anyway, so they kind of categorize. So it's opinionated on who they think are the best presidents and stuff like that. And it's not in chronological order, so it's a little bit harder to look up. If I wanted to find some information on a president, of course, obviously I can just Google it or go to Wikipedia or something like that. But sometimes if I want to get a book out and like, oh, let me read about this president, it's a little bit harder to find them in there. That'd be my criticism of that. See, Briar. I was actually watching Mr. B early today. No way. Cool. Watch Herbert Hoover. Okay, cool. Yeah. I said Herbert Hoover is actually a pretty fascinating president. He's got a bad rap because of the Great Depression happening during his presidency and all that. But yeah, really cool. I was in president's phase when I was younger. Okay. Oh, cool. So hope you enjoyed this video, Briar. Be talking a little bit about the presidents. Yeah, the last book I have actually to talk about, recommend, is this really cool book that I really was happy to get a year or so ago called The President's Fact Book. Achievements, campaigns, events, triumphs, tragedies, and legacies of every president. Roger Matus. It goes all the way to Donald Trump, so it doesn't cover the current president, which is what's his name? Joe Biden. Of course, it doesn't cover him at the moment, but this is one of the coolest books on the presidents I've ever read. And as you can see, it's pretty big. It looks like it's getting to about 800-page book. But of course, it's covering 46 different presidential elections and campaigns and all that. But yeah, really cool book. Just show you, I'm going to open a random page. Like say Franklin Pierce, one of the least known presidents we ever had. So like it shows a picture there and some facts, if you can see anything. Shows the facts and all that. Kind of goes through their history of what they did. And one of my favorite things is it usually talks about the campaigning, which I think is kind of an interesting thing to learn about what were the campaign, how did they campaign? Of course, early on, they didn't have obviously TV or anything, so campaigning was much different. You had to travel maybe, and some people didn't campaign at all really, and they didn't need to. And you didn't have to necessarily be a great speaker at the time. Of course, once TV came around, radio came around, in fact, you had to be more of a speaker than before. But it has like the election results, again, kind of cool, and talks about like different campaigning and like the slogans and all that, which I enjoy reading about all that, how they became president. Has different quotes on them, has their cabinet, which is kind of interesting, shows who was in their cabinet at the time, different historical events and figures that came about and what happened at the end of their presidency, and then also what happened after they left the presidency, all that. And then we get a section on the first ladies. So there's Pierce's first lady there, and it has information on them, which is also fascinating. Again, so quite a bit of information on each president, of course, in this, which I like. And maybe one of the coolest things it has is it has their like speeches. This is the inaugural address. So about every president they have written down their speech that they gave when they became president and had the inaugural address that we see now. And also in some presidents also has their farewell address. Of course, usually they have a big speech when they have to leave called the farewell address. So a lot of times it has their speech from that as well. So, I mean, if you want to read their actual speeches, major speeches there. It also has like a Gettysburg Address in here from Abraham Lincoln, of course, his biggest speech, like I said. I think it has like George Washington's farewell address, which is considered one of the great farewell addresses we've ever had, important documents we have in American history. I think it might even have like the Declaration of Independence and Constitution stuff in here. So a lot of good documents recorded in here, which is really cool if you want to learn about U.S. history. Like I said, what happens to them after the president. Anyway, so all that is credible information about each president. The best I've seen out of any book, anyway. So pretty good book, good sized book. But if you want to learn about the presidents, that's my favorite book probably to go through and learn a lot about them, anyways. But anyway, so that's the last book I have to recommend. Obviously, I have so many more to read, but it's hard because books are expensive. It's like collecting vinyl, collecting Blu-rays. There's definitely a cost there. So I don't have enough money to keep buying, of course, and time to read it all. So hopefully I'll get more. But anyway, so that's my my take on the presidents, my recommendations to all you. Feel free to comment if you have a favorite president that you'd like to read about or learn about, or any information like that. I'd love to read what you think about the subject matter as well. See, Briar, I actually have an older edition of the book you just showed. Okay, sweet. Me and you, Briar, man, we it looks like we can talk about the presidents someday. Goes up George W. Bush. Yeah, that's cool, Briar. So we have a similar interest there. I was even going to ask you because like Ronald Reagan has a presidential museum in California. I'd love to go visit it, but it's just so far away. I don't know if you've ever gone to visit Ronald Reagan's presidential museum or Richard Nixon museum's also in there. California obviously is huge, so I understand can't probably get to all of them as well as there's so much to travel and visit there in California. But yeah, that'd be cool. But yeah, so that's all I got to say about the U.S. presidents for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to everybody watching this, and thanks to all the subscribers and everybody that's supported me for these 300 videos I've made. I'm getting close to 200 subscribers. I think I have 185, so hopefully I get to 200 sometime this year, and we'll do another special video for that anyways. But yeah, so anyway, so that's all I got to say, and hope you all have a great Monday here and a great President's Day. So see you later.